Hello everyone. For everyone that's new to this channel, this is a part 2 video. The first video is about ranking the League of Non-Aligned Worlds. This video is about comparing the races in the Advisory Council to find out which ones are more powerful, while also looking at why they're considered more powerful than the other races in the League. We will be reviewing the younger races in the Advisory Council and not the Vorlons because they're an older race. We will be looking at if these races have the 4 elements of what makes a powerful race, and these elements are their alliances, technology, military, and economy. Of course, we'll also be investigating the history of each of one of these races because some of these races' history is not well known to us fans. So let's begin. Starting out on this list is the Earth Alliance. The Earth Alliance is from an uninteresting part of space. This part protects them from other races such as the Centauri during the height of their conquest. The only race the humans encountered for the longest part of their history were the Vree. These humans have the same history timeline as us, but the difference was World War III, which helped start the idea of the Earth Alliance and expansion into space. The first direct interaction with another alien race was the Centauri. Luckily, they didn't encounter the real Centauri government, but a survey ship that was under the control of the House of Jado, who was more interested in making a trade deal with the Earthlings than invade their planet. The Earthlings learned a lot from the Centauri, and they received their jump gate technology from them, and learned that there was dozens of other races that were far away from them, and then they realized that the systems around Earth was not claimed. This gave the Earth Alliance a chance to grow their territory without fighting for it. Their territory expanded fast, and it wasn't long until the Earth Alliance started to have neighbors. Most of the other races were peaceful and willing to start trade alliances with the Earth Alliance, except one other race called the Cholones. They were once slaves of the Centauri, and they did not appreciate the Earth Alliance building a space station near their territory. The Cholones found this act endangered their security and attacked the Earth Alliance. The Earth Alliance was able to push back the Cholones without too much damage to their own ships. The Earth Alliance found out later that the Cholones were weak and they could easily been conquered, but the Earth Alliance decided peace instead of war. This strategy helped improve the Earth Alliance's image with other races, showing that they're not willing to start a war, but they will end it. The Earth Alliance Golden Age didn't start until after the Dilgar War. The Victorious War helped show the power of the Earth Alliance military, and they gained generous trade deals with other races that were happy with the Earth Alliance helping them during the war. The war also helped increase the Earth Alliance technology because they captured Dilgar technology, which was more advanced than them. This victory and new technology helped place them alongside other powerful races such as the Narns and the Centauri. The humans were feeling confident after their new victory and started to push their influence into unknown areas of space. They end up starting a war with the Minbari, which almost ended their society. Luckily, the Minbari surrendered and left, which gave the humans a second chance to reorganize their society. To make sure the Earth-Minbari War never happened again, the Earth Alliance launched the Babylon Project. This project involved building a station which was in neutral territory. From all governments from other races can meet and solve their differences before starting a war. This puts the Earth Alliance in a powerful position, giving them a chance to put their influence on any trade or alliances agreements that occurred on the station. Overall, the Earth Alliance have placed themselves in a powerful position. They joined wars that benefit them through trade deals, alliances, and technology, and puts them above other races that have been around longer than them. What really helps the Earth Alliance grow was their well-structured military, and that their home was placed in an area in space that was not claimed by other races. This allowed the Earth Alliance to grow without worrying about being attacked by others. Next on the list are the Narns. The Narns are from a planet that's rich with resources, but it has a harsh environment. It's believed that the Vorlons came to the Narn planet and concluded that it's impossible for intelligent life to occur on this planet without outside help. The Vorlons chose an animal to increase its evolution, which eventually became the Narns. The Narns started as gatherers, which was difficult because of the harsh weather and climate. They started to gather in warmer climates where they survived in caverns near geothermal activity. Families started to form, and they stayed together to defend themselves against predators. Eventually, the Narn society formed into 7 different tribes, which you could call kingdoms due to the size and power they hold. These tribes were at constant war with each other. There was disease that lavished the planet, which gave the Narn people a strong immune system. Religion started to take place, and each tribe had its own religion, which brought more division between the tribes. Any unification between the tribes were broken because they had different religions. The elders from each tribe chose to meet together to bring an end to the violence. The elders decided to choose a single god or goddess from each tribe to represent a specific divine aspect. Overnight, the Narn religion changed. The Age of Unity is when telepathic powers started to form in the Narn population. Many people feared the telepaths, but eventually they took it as a gift from the heavens. These telepaths were eventually wiped out when the Narns used the telepaths to push the shadows off their planet. During the first Shadow War, the Shadows used the Narn planet as a base, but they were pushed off from the planet from the Narn telepaths. The telepaths were killed off during the war, and none of the relatives held a strong enough gene for the continuation for the Narn telepaths. After the war, the Narns entered an era of peace. They also had a dark age where they lost a lot of their knowledge that they gained from the war against the Shadows, but overall they had a peaceful existence. Their peaceful existence was interrupted by the Centauri, who came to enslave the Narns and took control of their resources. The Narn people fought back, and generations later the Centauri Republic gave up their control on the planet because it wasn't worth the manpower and trouble to hold this planet. The Narn people used the ships that were left behind by the Centauri military to form their own small empire. Most other races leave their planet and search for other life forms, but the Narns left their planet for revenge with a single idea to destroy the Centauri. The majority of the Narn technology was taken from other races, and a big portion of that technology is from the Centauri. The Centauri left a lot of their ships behind, but they did not leave behind one of their warships, which held the key to artificial gravity technology. That's why in the show we noticed that the Narns had the same kind of firepower as the Centauri, but they don't have artificial gravity in their ships. It's amazing how advanced the Narns became and how big their empire grew in such a short period of time. Even with their huge advancements in technology, the Narns are still incapable of maintaining a jump gate field. They are capable of creating a small version by using their capital ship, but it's still less effective. While it's true that the Narn government focuses on their military, they do have a strong economy. Their merchants have been a main source of technology advancements since the Centauri occupation, but the Narns mainly trade in weapons. Like Sinclair said, the Narns will sell to anyone who can afford the credits, which has made them a lot of money during wars. But what has held them back from growing their economy further was not joining the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, which would have given them the opportunity to gain more favorable trade agreements with other races and gain alliances as well. The Narn people are very friendly with other races, but they don't have alliances with other governments. They choose to stand alone. Other races respect the Narns' power, but they do not trust them. The second most powerful race on the list is the Centauri. They've always been a fascinating race. It's amazing how a race as complex as the Centauri were able to grow so powerful. In the beginning of their history, the Centauri were not the only race on their home planet. There was another race that evolved, and they were called the Zon. The Zon are from a smaller and colder continent where food was limited. The Centauri came from a continent where it was warmer and there was more food, but water was limited. The Zon became more tribal while the Centauri formed their society around their family. They were also less aggressive than the Zon. While the Zon stayed stagnant, the Centauri invented tools to be used for hunting and farming. They also invented their own language and writing. Both the Zon and Centauri both believed in many different gods, which were animals, but that all changed when the Great Maker appeared. The Great Maker was humanoid that shot light out of his eyes, which could destroy anything in an instant. This was believed to be the Centauri's first interaction with alien life. The Centauri claimed this humanoid to be their god, but the Zon had a different experience with the Great Maker because the Great Maker seemed to dislike the Zon. Recent historians found carvings in Zon cavings of the Great Maker shooting light out of his eyes at the Zon to destroy them. Due to both races living in different continents, the Zon and Centauri did not know about each other, but the all changed once the Centauri started to explore their ocean. The Centauri explorers came across the Zon, who are a warrior race. It's unknown what happened, but the Zon killed the Centauri crew and took control of their ship. The Zon came to the Centauri continent and attacked the different kingdoms. The Centauri were no match and were pushed back. Once they were able to push back the Zon off their continent, they were visited by an alien race who came to invade their planet. Without the help of the Techno-Mage, who arrived at the same time as the space invaders named the Shogren, the Centauri would never been able to defeat them. Before the Techno-Mage left, they helped raise one of the noble families named the Tascano to power and eventually became the royal family. After the Shogun were pushed back from the Centauri planet, a civil war occurred between the noble houses. Years later, another civil war occurred between the noble houses and the lower classes, where the noble houses won, which kept their power structure the same, but overall the Centauri enjoyed a prosperous life. They eventually used their technology advancements to wipe out the Zon from their planet, making them the only intelligent life on their planet. What made them become a spacefaring race was when they found the remaining of a Shogun ship on a mountain. The scientists were able to use the technology to build their own ship to explore other systems. With this ship, they were able to colonize other planets. There was a lot of growth during this time, but eventually the explorer ship had to be taken apart to allow the Centauri to study Shogun technology in depth to build their own version of the ship from scratch. Their new ship worked better than they thought. Their ship was able to jump into hyperspace, which was an advantage that they didn't have before. They were able to grow their territory faster, and during this time they heard another empire called the Garmic. This empire was older and stronger, but the Centauri were ready to test themselves against another empire and gain new technology. The Centauri's first engagement was an interaction they did not expect. Before the Centauri engaged the Garmic ship, another alien fleet jumped out of hyperspace and destroyed the Garmic fleet. The Centauri discovered later that this mysterious race was the Minbari. It turned out that the Garmic made a huge mistake when they were growing their empire and invaded Minbari territory. This act of aggression angered the Minbari and made it their mission to wipe out the Garmic Empire. This gave the Centauri a chance to take some of the Garmic technology that was left over after the Minbari wiped out their people. Also, the Centauri learned one big lesson, and that was never to make the Minbari angry. After adding the Garmic technology to their own, the Centauri had another civil war between their noble houses and the Royal Navy. The noble houses that lost had to repair the destruction that occurred during the war. This bankrupted the House of Voyager, which was a smaller house and couldn't afford the loss of the war. After the Civil War, the Royal Navy started to invade Drazi space. The invasion was slow due to the noble houses couldn't agree on anything, which made the Royal Navy unable to make decisive attacks against the Drazi. The Drazi were able to hold off the Centauri due to the support of another race called the Oriani, who supplied food and weapons to the Drazi. When the Centauri found out about this, they declared war on the Oriani. This caught them off guard, which helped the Centauri. The Oriani was more advanced than the Centauri, and the Centauri needed every advantage they could get. This war was a bloody and financially destructive war. After they won the war, they were weakened financially, which caused the decline of their empire. The Centauri Empire was still declining when we were introduced to them in the Babylon 5 show. They did gain artificial technology from the war, but due to the cost of the conflict, the Centauri had to reorganize and leave planets that was costing them too much money, and also was causing them problems such as the Narns. What helped keep the Centauri afloat was befriending the humans, which was beneficial to them because they didn't have a lot of alliances with other races due to their past conquests. Their economy was strong because they had a strong merchandise market, and that helped keep the Centauri wealthy. They were able to maintain their military. The Centauri government is considered weak to other races such as the Narns. What helped the Centauri stand out from other races is their technology. Compared to other races, Centauri are the most advanced younger races besides the Minbari and the Vree. What's interesting about the Centauri is that they're afraid of the Minbari, but they consider the Vree not a threat, which is due to their defeat from the Dogar. Overall, the Centauri are a powerful race, but recently their society and government has been declining due to their bad management and wars. This all changed when Vircado became emperor. Last on the list are the Minbari. The best way to describe the Minbari, but as Varlon experiments. The Minbari started out living in caves to survive a planet that was harsh and had lack of vegetation. They eventually left the safety of their caves after a huge earthquake and found themselves on an unkept planet where vegetation was overflowing. Due to the planet having more vegetation, the Minbari started to become nomads and explore the planet. The Varlons took an interest in the Minbari once they built their first city called Canetai, which was a marvel of engineering. They built buildings out of rock, which had shafts that could produce heat. This marvelous city made the Minbari worthy enough to be contacted by the Varlons. The Varlons introduced themselves to Canetai and helped advance the Canetai people. The Varlons visited other tribes, but the main interaction they had was with the Canetai people. This benefited the city because of the technology they gained from the Varlons. The Varlons were treated as gods by the Minbari people, which gave them the opportunity to guide the Minbari people. But the Varlons preferred not to get involved in Minbari society too much to avoid contaminating their society. The city of Canetai eventually started to expand their influence and started to conquer other tribes. The other Minbari tribes band together to push back their armies. This united force overwhelmed the Centauri army and pushed them all the way back to their city. The united tribes sieged the city for 2 years. The Vorlons thought the Minbari were not ready to be united and caused an earthquake which destroyed the city of Centauri. Once the city was buried, the Vorlons convinced the other tribes to go back to their lands. Some of the technology from the Centauri still survived, such as swords and armor, which was used by the other tribes in their small wars with each other. Centuries later, the city of Centauri became a legend, and tribes went back to fighting against each other. The Vorlons were absent during this time because of the war against the Shadows. A century later of fighting, it was declared a draw. The Vorlons were not able to destroy their enemy, but they did find out the Shadows' weakness. The Shadows were vulnerable to a specific wavelength of mental energy. This weakness encouraged the Vorlons to take a few Minbari and take them to the Vorlon homeworld to create the first telepaths. These telepaths would be used to fight against the Shadows in the next war. When the telepaths returned, they were considered sacred because they were connected to the Vorlons. Eventually, these telepaths formed into tribes, and they didn't stay silent for long. They started to use their power to grow their empire, causing a war between the telepaths and the other Minbari tribes. Eventually, the war ended after the most powerful telepaths called the Terziha were killed by the other tribes or went to hiding for their own safety. The Vorlons stepped in to protect their assets, which were the telepaths, and talked to the elders of the other tribes to form a closer alliances with them. The other tribes agreed because it gave them a chance to gain their technology from the Vorlons. The Minbari united for the first time because of the new treaty they formed with the Vorlons. But there was not complete peace between the Minbari and the Vorlons. A lot of the warrior clans blamed the Vorlons for the wars against the telepaths, but they did not have enough support to fight the Vorlons. The rebellion didn't start until the Vorlons notified the Minbari race that they were not gods. This destroyed the Minbari religion, and the religion clans joined forces with the warrior clans to fight these imposter gods called the Vorlons. The Minbari were patient and waited to gain enough technology from the Vorlons to destroy them. The first attack happened when the Vorlons allowed the Minbari to enter one of their ships. These Minbari blew up the ship while they were inside to signal to the other Minbari to wipe out the rest of the Vorlons on Minbar. Of course, this upset the Vorlons, who made it their mission to wipe out the Minbari. The Vorlons unleashed their weapons on the surface of the planet. Once they realized what they did, they helped the Minbari that fled underground to rebuild their society. The Vorlons told the surviving Minbari that all the destruction was done by warring clans, while naming themselves as gods again, knowing that the Minbari were not ready yet to know the truth about the Vorlons. The Vorlons left the Minbari system, allowing the Minbari society to grow without help from outsiders. This was a wise choice because the Minbari were able to build spaceships and explore their system. This was a prosperous time for the Minbari. They grew their territory. They also became protectors of a few races that were beneficial to the Minbari people. In the beginning, there wasn't a lot of conflict with other races, but they did go to war against another race called the Eklith. They attacked the Minbari first, which angered the Minbari, who made it their mission to wipe out the Eklith people. Now this brings us to when the Minbari met the Shadows. At first, the Minbari were not aware that their lost ships were destroyed by the Shadows. Once the Shadows started to attack the colonies, the Minbari raised their forces to attack the Shadows. The Shadows were shocked that the Minbari ships were able to destroy them. What made the Shadows choose the Minbari as their first target was because they recognized Vorlon technology that the Minbari were using. The Minbari were slowly losing territory against the Shadows, and the tide didn't change until Alien Station appeared, containing Valen and 2 Vorlons. With the help of Valen and the Vorlons, the Minbari were able to defeat the Shadows. The Minbari spent another 1,000 years in isolation. The Minbari do not have a lot of alliances, and their main alliances are from the races that they protect. These races are the main port of Minbari trade. They don't trade often with other races, and most of their economy / trade comes from those races that they protect. They do have an alliance with the Vorlons, but there really hasn't been need for Vorlon help because the Minbari technology is based on Vorlon tech. The only races the Minbari need to fear are other first ones. What makes the Minbari people a huge threat is that 1/3 of the Minbari resources goes toward their military. Given the Minbari a strong and big military, their soldiers are well trained because their soldiers spend their youth training. Other younger races fear the Minbari, but also respect them as well. The Minbari can be dangerous, but they can also be a generous race as well. These races have been able to divide up the resources to diversify their society in multiple ways. They don't focus all the resources in one area. The only race you could argue that does this are the Narns. What helps separates the Narns from other races is that they understand that they can make money, gain other resources, or gain new technology by selling their advanced weapons to other races or pirates. Other warring races such as the Drazi have not figured out how to monopolize on this process. What's your thoughts on this video? Which of these races are your favorite? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to click on the notification bell to keep yourself updated on my channel. Please check out the other video about the younger races. Thank you for watching Utopian Broadcast and hope to see you next time on my channel. Thank you.